Welcome back, listeners. Good to have you with us here on What Really Matters. Folks, it's with genuine pleasure I welcome a Golden Bear and a member of the Harvard Crimson. William Rick Cronk is president of the Boy Scouts of America. Good to have you with us, Rick.
Nice to be here, Tim.
Now, Rick was elected to that post May 24th of 2006, but you may know Rick from a prior life. He was the the president of Dreyer's Ice Cream. So we'll get the important questions right out of the way. Rick, what's your favorite flavor?
I'm asked that all the time, and the answer is always vanilla.
Oh,
and to someone who isn't in the industry, that seems strange, but when you're really tasting the quality of ice cream, you can't cover up vanilla with anything. You can't overpower it with nuts or chocolate or fudge or whatever. So if you really want to understand, the delicate balance of vanilla and cream, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, it's only vanilla. So that's it.
Yeah, well, his co-partner in crime, Mr. Rogers, also said the same thing, vanilla. That's quite a read. If you take a look at the Harvard Business case studies, you'll see some interesting comments from these guys. But what really is fascinating, listeners, at least to me, and what stands out in my mind, and this is a little humorous aside, was September 23rd of 2006. It stands out in my mind for a couple of reasons. One is I had a very nice black eye. Compliments of a rather overeager dog that knocked me down. Hello, April. And also, on the day with the black eye, I was meeting the King of Sweden, as well as Rick Cronk. So you do travel in some distinguished company, I must say.
Yeah, His Majesty, the King of Sweden, his father died when he was only 4 months old, and so his uncle raised him. And among the things that his uncle insisted upon was that Carl Gustav XVI become a scout. So he was a scout from the equivalent of our Cub Scouting through the equivalent of being an Eagle Scout. And he's passionate about it. He does everything he can to encourage every boy and girl in Sweden to be in scouting. He's just passionate about it. And when he was a young king at the age of 28, he discovered that the world scouting financially was a wreck.
Yeah.
And so he offered his services, and if he could, if it meant, and from a fundraising point of view, if it meant something to people that the King of Sweden would be a part of it, he was happy to be the carrot. And he's been very generous with his time ever since.
Well, we'll dive into that. We've got a lot of ground to explore. Rick, one of the questions, though, that I've always been wanting to ask. Now, you've been president of Boy Scouts of America, and you're the top volunteer overseeing about 5 million young boys who are in Scouts.
Right.
How's it going?
Well, actually, there are boys and girls in scouting, in that in addition to Cub Scouting and Boy Scouting, there's a venturing program for kids 14 to 20, and that's for boys and girls. So there are some girls in scouting.
Very much so.
It's been great. There are 5 million kids in scouting. What's more demanding of the president of the Boy Scouts of America's time is that there's 1.3 million volunteers. So you have 1.3 million, Cub Masters, Scout Masters, parents, merit badge counselors, et cetera, et cetera. And that's really the miracle of scouting. If you didn't have all those volunteers, there would be no program whatsoever. You couldn't support 5 million kids. There are only 3,000 employees, so.
Yeah.
So it's been great. I spend my time traveling the country. Whenever there's a gathering of 500 people or more, it would sure be nice if the president was there. So I'm out, raising money or singing the song or reading the scouting gospel or whatever, just to keep people fired up and willing to contribute their time.
And it's a great group, listeners. Certainly I've enjoyed scouting, and I know my son has. He's going into his Eagle project now. It really has done a lot for his self-esteem. More importantly, it's gotten him out. Not to say he's a couch potato who likes TVs and video games, but it's gotten him out to do things that ordinarily he would not do, including rock climbing and caving. And we'll leave out the story of me trying to get out of the smallest hole I've ever seen, struggling valiantly. How has membership grown since you've taken over?
Membership in scouting has been roughly flat for the last 5 or 6 years. For a variety of reasons. I mean, the demands on kids' time today is challenging. I mean, it's overwhelming. Just recently, scouting has been much more enthusiastically approaching the Hispanic community. I mean, in California today, from the ages of 5 through 18, from roughly kindergarten through the 12th grade, 48% of all kids in California are Hispanic. So that's the target market.
Makes sense.
And so Scouting is working very hard. It's an initiative that I started in the coals of which I fanned about 1.5 years ago. But Scouting just has to do a better job of being able to articulate to moms and dads why Scouting is important for their kids. And we're making great success, so I really think that Scouting over the next 5 and 10 years will get back to a growth rate of about 3, 4, 5% a year, a little faster than population.
That's good. I'm looking forward to seeing that. What are some of the highlights from your first year in office?
That's a good question. I've been focusing on 2 major initiatives. Number one, Scouting in the United States is divided up into 304 councils. So there's a San Francisco Bay Area Council, in Contra Costa County there's a Mount Diablo Silverado Council, etc., etc. The smallest council in America is the Piedmont Council. But
they're proud of it.
Yeah, they're very proud of it. There's no question about it. Among these 304 councils, a couple of years ago, about 75 of them were operating in the red. Not necessarily, it wasn't a disaster, but you know, some of them simply had their version of the financial flu, and others were in real trouble financially. And my concern and irritation with that is that when a council's in the red, they can't be enthusiastically trying to attract more kids. They can't be running a perfect Scouting program.
They're putting out fires.
Yeah, they're putting it precisely. So,
well, what was the cause of it, Rick? Just jumping off topic, since you're a businessman and have been for many years.
There are lots of explanations. Sometimes you have boards of councils, governing boards of councils that just are not attuned to what's really going on financially. You know, you may have a Scout executive at a council who, frankly, in the spirit of keeping his job, is not as candid with the board as he should be.
But also, I think some of it is there's a real passion for being in Scouting, and some people, and I've seen this, listeners, in many an occasion, they're passionate about their career, for instance, as a chef, but they're not good business people. And frankly, Rick, I think that needs to go hand in hand. Passion for Scouting, business sense.
You're absolutely right. So what we've done, what we're doing now, I mean, we cut the 75 councils last year in half. We only have about 35 that are in trouble now, so that's significant progress.
Excellent.
And I would hope that by the end of 2007, or at least by the middle of 2008, we get to the point where every single one of those 304 councils is rock solid. And so we now, the volunteers, and we have a professional staff of 4 people that are literally going out to these councils that are in trouble and sitting down with their board, sitting down with employees, understanding how they're raising their money, but also how they're spending their money.
Exactly.
On occasion, there will be councils that have 3 or 4 camp properties, and they're not using them efficiently. They're just, you know, they refuse to sell good old camp, you know, whatever it may be. And
oh, that's one heck of an experience, summer camp, I tell you.
But it can be a financial burden if you're trying to carry too much. So.
Yeah, I'd agree. And if you have an asset that's not being utilized, that doesn't really make any sense. Sell it, use it, whatever, but make it productive.
Precisely.
On a larger scale, Rick, as we wrap up this segment, what challenges are you seeing facing the Boy Scouts of America?
That's a good question. Again, as exemplified by our trying to reach out to the Hispanic community, I think the Scouting, I mean, has to continue to remain relevant. I mean, if it isn't relevant to kids, they're gonna vote with their feet and they're gonna walk out of their last Scout meeting.
That's true.
So
or be distracted by other things, soccer, what have you.
Yeah. So if you look, for instance, at merit badges 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and today, the merit badges are much more, you know, technically oriented than they were before. You still have, you know, bow and arrow and camping merit badge and first aid merit badge and all the basics, but there are 121 merit badges in Scouting, and they're much more intellectually challenging than they might have been 20 years ago. So that's just a matter of Scouting working hard to be relevant to kids today. It's no different than marketing any other product or service. If the kids aren't delighted and challenged and you know, feel the value of being a Scout, they're just not going to be Scouts.